It's Friday, June 26, 2020. Digital Trends Live is about to start. Here are some of the topics we're covering on today's episode of the show. The backlash against the use of facial recognition technology for policing purposes has now spread beyond self-imposed company bans. We'll tell you about legislative efforts that are starting up. And with a new resurgence in cases of COVID-19 in the United States, some stores are closing temporarily again, others permanently. This includes a huge announcement from Microsoft today. Plus, while the cancellation of Wimbledon this year led to many upset tennis fans, IBM has announced a new series called The Greatest Championships, which digitally enhances previous matches. And we'll be joined by our own Georgina Torbett to talk about all things space, including the rise of commercial space tourism and another successful test launch from the Virgin Galactic Spaceport. All of that and more on today's episode of Digital Trends Live. Yes, hello everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler, and again, thank you for joining us. We are here every single weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you trending tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and so much more. We're broadcasting live on a number of different platforms, and thank you for joining us. Joining the discussions, we get to ask your questions, talk amongst yourselves, but let's get you some news right here at the top of the show. And these are the trending stories, and this is certainly a big one that's happening right now. It has to do with Microsoft. So, as we know, during this pandemic, a lot of stores have closed. Different regulations happened. Some stores closed permanently, some temporarily, but Microsoft making this announcement today that they are closing their stores permanently. And this is a pretty big move. So Microsoft started opening up their stores in about 2009, really to combat with Apple. As we all know, the Apple stores are pretty iconic in themselves. Microsoft wanted to follow suit with that. They have about, I believe it was 100 stores in the U.S. And 10 stores internationally, or more than 100 stores here in the U.S. right now, but those ones are going to be closing. This is part of what that announcement is. They said that they don't plan to reopen it. They did say that it's going to end up costing the company about $450 million to close all of these retail stores, but they are in some pretty major locations. Obviously, they're in New York and all over the place with these huge locations that they have. They really did, if you've ever been into a Microsoft store, it really was kind of modeled a lot after the Apple experience, but closing permanently. So it's kind of a sign of the times of where we're at right now as we see COVID cases going back up, a lot of retail locations trying to think about how to handle it. They said they're going to be moving to an all-online sales approach. They did say that the employees that they have currently will be offered jobs to help facilitate the online side of things, but that is the big announcement there today. So about 100 stores in the U.S., UK store just launched last year, 10 other stores internationally. So yeah, kind of an end of an era there. Microsoft closing all of their stores due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, continuing on here with trending news. Let's talk about facial recognition technology. This has been a very big subject, particularly over the last few weeks, as many companies have banned the use of their technology for police forces due to systemic issues with the algorithms of facial recognition technology, and that they misidentify people, in particular people of color. And now there is a push federally to ban the use of facial recognition technology for police forces as well. So this is a Democratic-led bill that was put forth in Congress. It's called the Facial Recognition and Biometric Technology Moratorium Act of 2020. It's a long name, but what it is essentially it would prohibit federal agencies from investing in facial, voice, or gait recognition technology, so monitoring how somebody walks, until this stuff can be sorted out. It said it would also curtail the use of biometric surveillance by state and local governments. So what all that would be and how that would actually be applied, that remains to be seen there in the bill. But nonetheless, this is an actual push to stop this. And there are so many issues and studies that have come out about facial recognition technology and about how it's very unreliable when it comes to a lot of things. And that's why you see a lot of the companies that are wanting to roll back the use of this by police forces. And now this governmental push is certainly a big one for that. There's a lot of studies that have come out talking about how this does not work right. And so that's what's coming out with that. Again, the act is the Facial Recognition and Biometric Technology Moratorium Act of 2020, going through Congress right there. You can read more about that at digitaltrends.com. Continuing on here with trending news at the top of the show, Amazon may be sending driverless vehicles to your door here at some day, and they've made a big push for this today by acquiring the self-driving taxi firm Zoox. Zoox is somebody who's been around for a while. They've been working on autonomous vehicles. They had a whole plan to launch actually a driver service kind of along the lines of what Lyft and Uber, something like that, a ride-sharing service. But that was all kind of put on hold because of the pandemic. But now Amazon just bought them for allegedly about $1.2 billion. That's being reported by the Financial Times. I don't think Amazon's actually said how much it was, but a couple of sources are saying that. So about $1 billion they bought Zoox. And this goes along Amazon's push towards providing more infrastructure and vehicles of their own. We've seen them buy airlines. I mean, they have pretty much their own airline at this point. They've provided a lot of their own drivers, and now this would be a push toward driverless delivery. And Morgan Stanley analyst said that in May in a report that driverless delivery for Amazon would save them more than $20 billion each year. So the $1 billion investment towards that kind of seems like that's where they're going with that for driverless delivery. But again, that's Amazon, $1 billion investment, or buying, not even investment, buying Zoox outright. They said it'll still operate kind of autonomously, but it will be overseen by Amazon. So a big move by them today. Continuing on here with trending news, let's talk about the coronavirus again. And that is certainly something that's on a lot of people's minds as we see how it has changed our world and what kind of the impact of the pandemic has been for both quarantine and just how it's changed things. And there's a new map, a new dashboard that came out from the collaboration of some space agencies that have come together. We have NASA, the ESA, the European Space Administration, and JAXA, which is the Japanese one. They all came together and combined a bunch of their information from 17 of the different agencies' satellites and combined with human activity to showcase how it has affected things. So that comes from not just climate indication like air quality, but they also showcase population density, night light levels. So clearly, they can get if you've ever seen those images from space of the glowing cities, they've got that information. They've got transportation activity. And so they've got all these different indicators. You can go through. You can sort the data by country. It's a lot of information if you think of the three of these combining to just kind of give a good idea of what kind of an effect this has had. And certainly that's something we're going to be analyzing for a long time, but this is a pretty intriguing, fairly real-time information about what's going on. They said they're going to be adding more indicators as they go on, so they'll be showcasing other factors as they get more information put into there. But really it's about for anywhere in the world, I believe. And they said they're going to regularly update it. Even things like water clarity, all kinds of different things that have been put into there. So, because water clarity did improve certain places, so they'll showcase what that is. But a lot of information, pretty interesting dashboard. We've got an article up at Digital Trends that you can go there and read about it and then click through and actually try it out. But certainly kind of fascinating to see what kinds of changes this has had in so many different ways. And that, again, is at digitaltrends.com. Continue on here. Trading news. Let's talk about Google. Something that I think we can all agree it is annoying are robocalls. And there's been a lot of efforts to stop robocalls, but also, if you're like me, a lot of other people probably do this too, where if you don't recognize the phone number, you just don't answer it. Well, now there's a way that could actually change some of this up. And that is because we've got Google, who is announcing that they are going to be, this is from a report actually from somebody else, about Google developing a feature called verified calls. So verified calls is going to work like this, in theory. A business would be working with a Google server that would handle the verified calls, a verified calls partner, and then they would actually be able to input who they're calling, why they're calling, like a brief explanation of why they're calling to say it's, to schedule an installation of cable or something like that. So when you got a phone call, and this would go through the Google Phone app, it would pull up and it would say, hey, I'll just use an example, it's Comcast. They want to schedule an installation of your cable. Here's their phone number. So before you pick it up that it's verified and it will showcase their logo. And then that way you're not answering potential robocalls or spam calls or anything like that. So this is a whole system that would probably take a while to get developed, but it would be, again, verified calls going through the Google Phone app, which you can download right now. Right now, it would probably just be on Android phones when this does roll out. But another interesting use case of their technology that Google's been building out for all of this stuff. And they have a lot of different AI sources right now where you can actually use it to schedule things. It's pretty fascinating where they're going, but I think we can all agree that less robocalls, more knowing what people are calling about would probably be a good thing. I can't imagine anybody being against that in theory, but that is something you can read more about at digitaltrends.com. And we've got some other news here. Is this the Ford F-150 is being released? And yes, Ford F-150 is, I believe, and I could be wrong, it's one of the best-selling vehicles in the United States and beyond, I'm sure. But they had their big event last night, and Dennis Leary even emceed it. But some of the big things about it are the technology side of things with this. So it's got this system called Sync 4. They really upped it. You can see that, a giant touch screen. They've got a 12-inch screen that can be split so that users can control multiple functions simultaneously. Navigation, music, truck features. It's got the Sync system has an embedded 4G LTE modem. It can provide Wi-Fi access for up to 10 devices. Again, this is all coming from an F-150. It's got all the other standard features, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all of that. It's got a surface space set up for laptops for working from your vehicle. And they also said that they have an EPA estimated range of this being the key thing here, the hybrid version of this. It's a hybrid version that would get about 700 miles on a single tank of gas and deliver at least 12,000 pounds of maximum towing. So a hybrid F-150. We do anticipate they're going to be releasing an E version of this at some point. So this wasn't the E version, but it does seem to be going in that direction. So kind of a lot of tech there to analyze with that, but we've got all those details at digitaltrends.com.
Hey, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. It's now time for the product of the day.
All right, here is our product of the day, and it is the 10-inch selfie ring light with 50-inch extendable tripod stand. So it's the whole package deal here. I'm talking about those ring lights that you see everybody using. They're pretty handy. These things are pretty great. This has, again, this is the 10-inch selfie ring light. It's got a 50-inch tripod that comes with it, so that's great. You can set up kind of wherever you want. It's got a flexible phone holder. It's, as they said, for live streaming, for your makeup videos. It's got something set up for the desktop. It's got all kinds of different ways that you can customize it for you. It's got a Bluetooth remote, so you can sit back and Bluetooth remote it in. Three-way pan head, a convenient handle, so you can do all of that, as you can see right there. Yes, she's using the handle. So this is one of those things where if you're starting up your channel here, you want to start doing some more videos, good lighting is key. So there you go. This is what our product of the day is. Again, it's the 10-inch selfie ring light. It is on sale right now. Normally $75.99, on sale for $53.54. So it's about 30% off. And to take advantage of it, click through. There's the link right there below me, or there's another link where you can click through and get the deal, so whatever platform you're watching this on. But that is our product of the day, the 10-inch selfie ring light. All right, let's continue on here with Digital Trends. We're going to take a break. Coming up from IBM, we have Noah Sykin, who's the VP of Sports and Entertainment Partnerships, and we're going to be talking about Wimbledon, and in particular some really incredible things that IBM has done with their technology to digitally enhance previous championships. That's coming up next. Stick around. Back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Again, thanks for joining us every single day here. We appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button. I know I say that a lot, but just go up there and do that. Because we talk about a lot of different things and how technology can affect our lives, and certainly the pandemic has affected a lot of things, and that includes sports. A lot of sporting events were canceled, Wimbledon being one of those. But now there is a pretty incredible use of technology to digitally enhance some previous matches, and that is what's coming up, and that is the Greatest Championships 2020. We're going to talk about that right now because we have Noah Sykin, who's the VP of Sports and Entertainment Partnerships at IBM, joining us to cover this. Noah, hello. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me.
I want to get everybody the information on this because I think it's a really cool use, looking at some of the demonstration technology that we have here in some of the trailers for this. Tell us about what this event is and what this partnership is that IBM has launched.
Sure. So we've been partners with Wimbledon for 30 years, but it's a pretty unfortunate set of circumstances we find ourselves in with Wimbledon being canceled this year. The club really didn't want to disappoint their fans, their patrons. And so they're still putting on an amazing 2 weeks of tennis, but the tennis is classic tennis. And so in a very short period of time, we've turned around, we've pivoted with the club, and we've started to produce AI-enhanced classic matches from Wimbledon. So on Wimbledon.com over the 2 weeks of the fortnight, while you won't have live tennis, you'll have some of the greatest matches of all time, and they'll be revealed slowly over the course of those 2 weeks. Each day, several matches will be revealed for fans to enjoy in an updated AI-enhanced way.
When you think about Wimbledon and tennis in particular, I mean, iconic matches are certainly a big part of the lore of tennis. And so I want to talk to us a little bit about how you chose those, but let's talk about the technology side of it here. So when you say digitally enhancing, can you talk us through what that means and how it is that it's different from what we had before?
Sure. So broadcast technology, video technology was obviously a lot different in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so we've applied AI to those historic matches. We've looked to reduce the noise in those matches, update the color in those matches, de-blur those matches, and also supplement them with modern day statistics. So the way that statistics were captured in the 70s, 80s, and beyond were a lot different than how they're captured today. So in addition to a much more clear, much more enhanced video experience, the kinds of data that they're going to fans and viewers are going to get in these matches is much more aligned to modern day standards. So I'm going to see the matches better, I'm going to hear the matches better, and I'm going to be able to follow the context of the data in the matches in a way that wasn't possible when they originally aired.
I mean, it's pretty, we're looking at a little bit right there, but I mean, even down to the crowd, the crowds, you can see what the era was just by what the fashion sense was with the crowds in there, which I think is really cool too. But when it comes to this kind of technology, and certainly this is something that IBM has been working on for a long time, but I mean, digitally enhancing it, bringing this back, what are some of the other implications of this kind of tech?
Yeah, well, look, I think we're applying AI across the world of sports. We're quickly, as Wimbledon winds down in a couple of weeks, we're quickly going to turn our focus to the U.S. Open. And U.S. Open's going to have live tennis. They're not going to have fans in the stadium. They announced that a week or so ago. And so by the same token, we're taking AI and we're going to think about how we can apply the sounds of the game that the AI has understood over the past 5 years. You may know that we've created AI-powered highlights in the world of tennis for about 5 years now. And part of those highlights have been driven by the audio of the game, right? So we know what a first-round match sounds like. We know what a semifinal match sounds like. We know what a top-ranked player sounds like versus a 25th ranked player. And so we're going to be applying AI in new ways over the course of time, whether it's at the U.S. Open or hopefully at the Masters in November. So the implications are varied depending on what the circumstances are. I think the most compelling part of this experience is that we've been able to do over 30 matches in just a short amount of time as the club's plans materialized due to the circumstance.
I think that's what's incredible too, is being versatile enough to handle this, because I mean, clearly none of us really expected this is where we would be at right now. So to be able to change and adapt to that is a pretty incredible use and showcase of the artificial intelligence alone. Now you mentioned some other matches and some other things that, as it goes on with this. I do have a question. You mentioned the crowd side of things. So for the U.S. Open side, will that be something you're going to digitally put in, or digitally may be the wrong word, but you're going to place in those crowd noises during the match itself?
So the USTA and the broadcasters, they're still formulating their plans for how they want to present the match. The key is that we have that data, right? The data is available to us. The sound data is available to them. We've made it available. We've made our services available. How the players and how the USTA may want to stage it in the stadium itself relative in the broadcast, relative to the digital experience, I think will play out over the course of the next couple weeks.
You mentioned, being able to go back and watch it with all of that data, that a lot of the stuff that maybe we're used to now, but certainly wasn't available back then. Do you anticipate more interactive experiences in association with tennis and using this technology going forward when we do get back to regular matches?
Sure. We want to make custom experiences available to fans across everything we touch. For Wimbledon, you're going to be able to go right to those exciting points in the match, that break point, that ace, that all the key points in the match. And as time goes on, we're going to be updating those matches with excitement levels, again, driven by the historical crowd noise. So we're always looking to find ways to deliver custom experiences for sports fans. And the transition to the digital transformation that entities like Wimbledon have been on over the past 5 years have really positioned them pretty well to take this on right now. Our teams are planning on operating at the U.S. Open off-site in a remote fashion. And the digital transformation that's been enabled by the cloud has enabled these kinds of sports entities to be ready for this moment.
It's really cool what you're doing here, and like you said, IBM has plenty of experience, 20 years of experience, 30 years, I can't remember what it was, decades of experience with Wimbledon and with this kind of information. So you guys know what you're doing. But then on top of that, just using this technology, it's just really exciting to see how it all plays out and how you're able to adapt to it. And I want to remind everybody of where they can go to watch all of this. What would be the best platform for them to go to?
Yeah, so Wimbledon.com is the best platform to experience this updated video. It's AI-enhanced video, and much credit to our partners at Wimbledon for quickly developing a plan that's going to allow millions of people around the world to engage with Wimbledon and have an amazing experience and recall some of those great moments from the past. And there are so many. I remember, my first experience with Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe, and so we hope to bring that to today's fans as well.
That is really cool. Well, Noah, thank you very much for joining us here to talk about this. I always love talking about what IBM's up to when it comes to all of your cutting-edge technology and being able to adapt and change as everything changes. I mean, it's really fun to talk about. And thanks, like I said, for being here on Digital Trends Live.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I appreciate it, Greg.
Noah Seigan right there, VP of Sports and Entertainment Partnerships. Really cool what they can do. I know I keep saying that, but I mean, that's fun stuff. In this situation, it's cool to see how technology is advancing and changing. All right, let's continue on here with Digital Trends Live. We have more coming up on the show, I believe. Coming up next, we've got Georgina Torbett for a Space Roundup. There's a lot happening with space. If you watch this show, you know I like space. That's coming up next. Stick around back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Hello, everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler, and thank you for joining us. It is now time for something that I love to talk about, and that is Space Talk. That's not the official name of the segment, but we're going to talk about space. And to do so, of course, we have Georgina Torbett joining us to recap some of the biggest news that is happening in association with space. Georgina, hello.
Hi, Greg. How are you doing?
Doing great. Excited to talk to you about all these different things that are going on. And I know one of them I was just reading about here before we went on air has to do with Virgin Galactic and some tests that they've been doing. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure. So Virgin Galactic are going to be one of the first space tourism companies. And what they're getting into is suborbital flights. So that's taking passengers right up until the edge of space. And just recently, this week, they performed their second test flight from Spaceport America, which is the sort of new big commercial spaceport. And so they performed a glide test where they took, the ship is called the Spaceship 2 Unity. And so they took it up to an altitude of about 50,000 feet and let it go and checked that it glided smoothly back through the atmosphere and landed back at the spaceport. So that was their big test for the week.
And that's one of those things where that'll eventually take people up for their tourism flights, I suppose, is what you would call it.
Yeah, that's right. So they're going to check through all the data that they got from this test, and then they're going to do a powered test next. And eventually, people will be able to go up to the very edge of space on the Spaceship Unity. But Virgin
Galactic they just had another partnership.
Right. Sorry. Yeah. So that they have also just set up a new partnership with NASA in that they're hoping to do orbital flights as well. So not just up to the edge of space, but actually all the way to the International Space Station, where they want to take space tourists from Earth to space as part of this new agreement they've got with NASA.
So one more, company doing this. You got SpaceX doing a bunch of that too, or planning to take people up, and Virgin Galactic now with their partnerships. And I think a lot of those are pretty interesting. But there's still the science missions that are going on, and I know there's a lot happening this summer, including the Mars launch. What can you tell us about that one?
Right. So there's just about 1 month to go until the Mars 2020 mission launches. They're going to launch the Perseverance rover. Mars, and also along with the rover, they're going to launch a small helicopter called Ingenuity, which will be the first helicopter ever to fly on another planet. So that's very exciting. And NASA just announced recently that they're pushing back the launch date by just a couple of days. They've had some issues with contamination of the ground support equipment. So they just want to make sure everything is clean because they're very careful not to send up any kind of contaminants from Earth that could possibly affect the Martian environment. So they're now looking at July 22nd for the launch of this rover. And hopefully it's going to go and search for evidence of ancient life on Mars, which is very exciting.
That's so cool. I've seen some of the videos of what the helicopter, like animations of how that would look on the planet too, and how it's going to operate. It's really, really exciting stuff of what they're doing with this. And that one, how long does it take it for it to get up there for Perseverance? Because it'll launch on July 22nd now, but then it actually lands, is it early next year?
Yeah, it should land in February. I believe it's February the 18th they've got scheduled. So they have to launch within a particular window of time when Mars and Earth are close to each other. And that only happens about every 26 months. So that's why it's really important to launch in this particular time this summer. And then once it launches, the rover can start exploring. And also, one of the reasons the helicopter is so interesting is that Mars has an extremely thin atmosphere. So it would be totally unlike flying any kind of helicopter here on Earth. And so it's really experimental to see if this could work as a way to explore the planet. And potentially, if it does work, then there are whole new areas of this planet and maybe others that aren't accessible by rovers that might be accessible by helicopter. So it's a really exciting experiment, that one.
That is really cool. And you brought up other planets. There's also some news in the search for exoplanets.
That's right. So as of now, there have been about 4,200 exoplanets discovered. And one thing that scientists are really curious about is how many of these planets are like Earth or potentially capable of supporting life. And one of the most important factors, obviously, is the presence of water, of having some kind of surface water, because we know that that's, as far as we understand it, kind of essential for life, as we know. So recently there was a study that estimated, from the data we know about these exoplanets, looking at the ones which are roughly the size of Earth, how many of them might have an ocean. And it turns out to be really high. It's like as many as a quarter of the planets could have oceans. And quite a few of them could be places like Enceladus or Europa, which are moons of gas giants here in our solar system, where they have an icy crust around them, but under that there is thought to be a liquid ocean. So there's a whole new potential range of places we could look for life, even though they might be further out from stars than we expected, even though there might not be visible water on the surface. It turns out there's this huge potential for potentially life-supporting environments to be out there in exoplanets that we've already discovered.
So cool. And then there's one other thing that they're doing too now, and this I want you to explain. I haven't actually looked this up. I'm curious about what is a technosignature?
Right. So there's a new approach. NASA have just given a grant to some researchers who are coming up with new methods for searching for alien life. Because the traditional way it's been done is there's kind of two main methods. Either you look for what are called biosignatures. So that's things like production of methane or other gases that indicate that there could be some kind of biological function going on there on the planet. The problem with that is that you see, for example, on Mars, actually, that you can also get methane being produced through chemical processes. And so the other thing that people tend to do is look for radio signals on the basis that if there was life, it was technologically advanced, it would probably be producing some kind of radio signal that we might be able to detect. But the new approach is to look for, rather than biosignatures, technosignatures. So it's saying, if alien life existed and was technologically advanced, what might we be able to see that would be evidence for that? And so one idea is to look for things like pollutants, on the basis that if there's industry, that's going to affect the atmosphere. And so you could look for things like CFCs, which were banned on Earth here in the 80s because they damaged the ozone layer. But those compounds don't occur in nature, but they are commonly produced by industrial processes. So the idea is, if you can look at an alien planet and say, oh, hey, there's CFCs there, where did they come from? That would be a strong indicator that there's some kind of technology there. And so what this new study is doing is trying to come up with the parameters for what would a technosignature be? What might the indicators of technologically sophisticated life look like that we would be able to identify here on Earth?
That is really exciting, just to think about. I don't know. All of it's very exciting to me, and I know that we've got all the details at digitaltrends.com as well for all of the things that Georgina is keeping us up to date with, and thinking about technosignatures and just what the possibilities are. It's just really cool. It's a really great time for space right now, for anything associated with it. And Georgina, thank you as always for being here to keep us up to date. Read all of her articles there on the website, and I will talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Lovely to speak to you, Greg. Speak soon.
Georgina Torbett right there on Digital Trends Lab. I know I need to get to a break. We've got more coming up. We have the debut of one of our new editors here from Digital Trends. We've got Jaron Schneider, who's going to be on next to talk about Olympus and cameras and technology that may be going away. Why did it happen? We're going to discuss that. That's coming up next. Stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Again, thank you for joining us wherever you are. We appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button. Join the show. We're live here every single weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And we'd like to talk about trending technology, but also as new technology emerges, other technology goes away. And that's what we're going to talk about in part right now with Olympus in particular. But to do so, we have the Digital Trends Live debut, one of our newest editors here at Digital Trends. It's Jaron Schneider. Jaron, hello. Thank you for being here on the show. Because of the pandemic, we haven't actually met in person yet, but this is as good as it gets, I guess. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Greg.
So this is a really interesting article that you got up, just talking about kind of the end of what happened. And I wonder if you could give everybody just a little bit of a backstory here and a little bit of understanding of what it is that's going on with Olympus.
Yeah, so for those who aren't in the photography industry, it's not something that's super common knowledge about what happened with Olympus. They've had a kind of a rocky history over the last decade plus, going from some issues financially, which caused them some global embarrassment and imprisonment of some of their former executives. And they had to be bailed out of that situation because it hurt their brand significantly. But they managed to recover to a degree that they managed to get control of their company again. They didn't have to have any outside money. But for the past 3 years, specifically in their camera division, which was not their most profitable division, their most profitable division is in medical, they had not posted a profit in 3 years. And as a result, they have decided to completely exit the imaging industry. They're selling to a private equity firm in Japan, who's likely just to liquidate their assets. So Olympus, as a company, they did something unique to cameras. They designed and they built their own relatively open source mount and sensor structure. They worked with Panasonic to do this. It's called Micro Four Thirds. It's not the nicest name. It's hard to. It's like full frame and all those things are much easier to say. Micro Four Thirds sounds funny. But it became a relatively well-known standard. DJI uses it. Other companies like Blackmagic use it. Panasonic still uses it. Olympus was the only one who really focused on that. Was the only thing they did, though.
And so focusing like that on this Micro Four Thirds, you mentioned some other companies that also do this, but that wasn't enough to keep them afloat through all this. Well,
the issues with it were it just wasn't as eye-catching for the general consumer. The problems with the sensor is it hadn't been updated in a very long time. And the thing is, it's pretty small. If you look at the images we're seeing right now, the sensor in there is not very big. And as a result, there's limitations on what you can do with that kind of space on a sensor. And it began to be hard to tell the difference between what you could make with a cell phone and what you can make with this. And that's kind of where Olympus is putting a lot of their the blame for why they're having to leave the industry, is because of cell phone manufacture and the fact that computational photography has gotten so much better that it's just you can't compete with that. But I don't think that that's a necessarily fair and whole view of why the company failed in photography. And the fact that they're blaming cell phones, I think, is rather, short-sighted. It's a scapegoat. It's an easy scapegoat for them to say, yeah, cell phones are the reason we're getting out. When in reality, they didn't choose to do more with their own technology. They did not choose to branch out. When I said that they're the only ones who are sticking firmly to this format that they helped pioneer, that ended up hurting them more than helping them. Panasonic, who I mentioned, also uses this format, went on to work with bigger sensors. They invested in sensor companies to make them sensors. So they went beyond that so that they wouldn't get shoehorned into this one area, which clearly hurt Olympus because, well, they're just not around anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and after 84 years, it's one of those things where I guess if you can't adapt to the changing technology, then, you're going to sink. But still, it's pretty crazy to think that they're failing with this. And you mentioned some of the other ones that are still succeeding because they expanded upon the technology that they're using. When it comes to cell phones, and just to ask your opinion on this, do you think we're going to get to a point where cell phones could be a direct competitor to this kind of photography?
Not only do I think it's possible, I believe it's already happened for the most part. One company that is doing a lot in this area is Sony. They're putting some considerable technology into their cell phone lines. They are kind of, as a company, known for doing this. In televisions, they're using knowledge from their cinema resource, their monitors that they use in high performance, cinema production. They're using that technology in televisions. So they borrow a lot in that sense. So Sony is in a unique position of being able to do that kind of thing. But with like when you look at like Google, computational photography out of Google, like the Pixel phones, is incredible. Those sensors are smaller than the size of your pinky fingernail. And yet they are able to do more in low light than something like this Micro Four Thirds system from Olympus. Things just look crisper. There's less noise. It doesn't look like, if you ever look at a low light picture from a cell phone, it kind of looks muddy sometimes. Like there's no real detail anywhere. It just kind of put together with pieces like finger painting. That is something that is kind of hard to do the smaller the sensor you get. But when you get the technology behind it where it can kind of take multiple scenes together and force them into one image, that type of computational photography is becoming like a lot more prevalent now.
It's interesting to see where it's going to go, but again, with Olympus out of it after 84 years, that's a huge name to go down. And you've got a great article at Digital Trends that walks through all of this that we're just talking about in a lot more detail, just explaining what happened to them, and maybe it's a sign for other companies too to pay attention. Like, if you got to expand, you got to be able to adapt. But fascinating looking at the history of it. And Jaron, thank you so much for being here with us to talk about this too. Again, encourage everybody, digitaltrends.com, go check out your article. And yeah, thanks for being here on the show.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
All right, we'll be having Jaron on more as well, but check out that article at Digital Trends. It's very interesting, taking a look at the history of Olympus. Continuing on here with the show, we've got, coming back to the show, Mr. Drew Prindle to talk about a new series that is debuting today for Digital Trends. It's about robots. You're not going to want to miss it. It's coming up next. Stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I am Greg Nibbler, and you are watching us. Thank you for doing that. You can hit subscribe on whatever platform you're on. We appreciate it. We're here every single weekday. We talk about all kinds of technology, but something that we can all agree that is happening is that robots are everywhere, and that is the theme of what we're going to discuss next. It's a new series for Digital Trends. To talk about it, we've got our own Drew Prindle here joining us to talk about this robot takeover that's happening. So, Drew, tell us about what this new series is.
Yeah, so it's pretty much exactly what the title would lead you to believe. It's about how robots are everywhere. It's kind of funny because, like, I feel like now we all kind of accept the fact that, like, yeah, robots are here. They're a thing that exists in the world that we live in. But the fact of the matter is like, just looking back like 10 years ago or so, or even like 5 years ago, they weren't particularly advanced. There was like some point where they went from being like this science fiction dream to being just very much present in everyday life. And that's not just like, you know, the Boston Dynamics, like spot robots that walk around and patrol parks and stuff now. It's also like the Alexa speakers, the AI that we have all welcomed into our homes, and so much more beyond that. Like in industry, in business, there are robots absolutely everywhere that you look now. And I feel like nobody was talking about it. We've all kind of just like accepted that fact. It's the whole the frog soup argument. You know, if you put a frog in cold water and if you put a frog in hot water, he'll jump out right away. But if you put a frog in cold water, slowly heat it up, you'll have frog soup. That's exactly what's happening. We just kind of haven't realized that robots have made their way into every facet of modern life.
Yeah, the more that you say about that, I mean, just even showcasing right here, you know, you got a Roomba, but if you think about the artificial intelligence aspect as well, and Alexa speakers and where that's going, I mean, yeah, they're everywhere. They're slowly taking over. I always say there's going to be a robot apocalypse at some point. I'm not the only one. But before that, we can enjoy what's going on. So with all of these different things, you know, for this series in particular, what kinds of aspects do you take a look at and to give everybody just kind of an idea of what the episodes are really about?
Yeah, so in each one, we kind of put a lens on one specific like subset or use of robots. So we did one on humanoid robots, for example, and like I kind of go into that one, like why, for some reason, we keep trying to make robots that are shaped like humans, despite the fact that usually making them in different shapes is like more efficient. We can make them more tailored to the particular environment that they're working in. So yeah, humanoids is one aspect. Another one that we looked at was just how robots are being used for specific industries. One of them is delivery. Robotic delivery is coming up pretty quickly, and that's not just delivery drones. It's also autonomous shipping and trucks, and even robots that'll deliver stuff directly to your door. If you're watching the video right now, yeah, we also have one on military robots and defense. One of my favorite ones, though, is about how robots have they have a huge role in our food system. And I'm not talking about just like, you know, factories that kind of process food that are mostly automated. We're also talking about tractors, like that are actually, robots are taking a huge role in growing our food, growing and harvesting it. And then they're robotically processed. And now increasingly, they're also being served to us by robotic waiters and delivered to our doors by, you know, services that use robots. So yeah, that was one that kind of surprised me as I dug into it, was just how much robots are involved in the production and consumption of food.
I mean, you think about just a couple of years ago, how many people had even smart home devices? Not that many. I mean, not compared. And it was not that long ago. And now, yeah, that's everywhere. And now we're just getting used to this idea of autonomous vehicles and, yeah, robot deliveries. And yeah, it's happening all the time. It's robots everywhere. The name makes sense. And how often are these episodes going up? Where are we putting these?
I think the plan is one a week. We've got 8 episodes in the can right now, probably planning on doing a few more. But the first one is up right now, and it's kind of just this first one is about a robot talent agency. And it's basically just to show you just how insane things have got. And that's just because now a robot talent agency exists. Just the fact that that is a thing now kind of underscores how far robotics has come in the past like 5 to 10 years.
A robot talent agency. Well, we're all going to be taken over by robots at some point, so we might as well have some fun while we can. But robots everywhere, up now. Take a look at that new series here from Digital Trends, analyzing that. I love it. That's such a great idea. Drew, as always, good to talk to you. Looking forward to watching this.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, man.
Drew Prindle right here. Robots everywhere. So available now. Go check that out. And like you said, new episodes coming out probably every week, but we'll have a new one that comes up there. So a lot to analyze with that. And we've analyzed a lot this week. And I say thank you to everybody who joins us here on Digital Trends Live. A couple of things. Next week, we've got, Drew's going to be back on Monday for awesome tech you can't buy yet. We're also going to have Ronan Glon joining us for an automotive technology update. So a lot of stuff going on with that. And as always, we'll have some great guests, and we're here for you every single weekday. So I encourage you to share the show. Let other people know about it. You know, we want you to be a part of this, and we appreciate all of you who joins this show. We work hard to bring this to you every week, and so I just want to say hi to Jess, Kelsey, Mike, Jake here in Portland, and of course Mike and Lara in New York. That's part of our team that makes this thing happen every single day, and it's a lot of work, and they're very much appreciated. And we, like I said, appreciate you. It's a lot of appreciation today. So thanks for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. I'll be right back here on Monday with another edition of Digital Trends Live.